Product provided by Nintendo. ARMS is Nintendo's latest attempt at creating a new IP and a new multiplayer focused game on the Nintendo Switch. Much like Splatoon, you'll find some interesting single-player content here, but the life of this new game is pretty much solely focused in the multiplayer, both online and local. Created by the same team that worked on Mario Kart 8, ARMS has you play as one of 10 characters, each equipped with their own set of special arms and characteristics. The characters are lovable and charming, each with their own little style theme. You're allowed to set 3 different types of arms before a match and then mix and match them before each round in a match set. Different characters can equip different variations of arms too, each with their own attributes that can contribute to a turn in a match. For example, Helix's blob arms are heavy and short range, but they pack quite a punch and can leave an opponent distracted with ink on their screen when they get hit. On the other hand, Springman's toaster arms move much faster but get a damage boost whenever Springman is low on health. Each of the characters have slight differences too, like the Mummy character. He's really big so he doesn't flinch as much when being punched, but he moves really slowly too, while Bite and Bark offer a dual fighter character of sorts. The combinations of different arms and matchups between the arm sets is where the metagame lies for ARMS. Players will spend most of their time unlocking new arms and trying them out and seeing which arms coordinate well together and against other matchups. During a match, players will have the option to choose whether they like to play with motion controls or physical buttons. Playing with the Joy-Con separately activates the motion controls. Here you can thrust your arms forward to launch the corresponding arm in the game too. You can add curves to your punches by twisting your arms in real life towards the direction you want them to move. Launching both of them forward activates the grab that can break through guards or blocks. It can deal quite a bit of damage too. Guarding is done by pointing each of the Joy-Cons to each other, and movement is controlled by pointing both the Joy-Cons in a single direction. The motion controls also have some buttons too. For example, each of the shoulder buttons are dedicated to a dash or jump button, while one of the bigger triggers is dedicated to activating your rush attack. This is sort of like the special move in the game that launches a bunch of punches at once. It slowly builds up during a match with every punch you throw, and you can actually see it build up with that little white triangle next to your health bar. The physical button controls map everything to a corresponding button, and for me personally, I found this controller scheme to be my favorite. Oftentimes I'd miss input or be misrecognized when trying to play with the motion controls. Sometimes the game would throw 2 separate punches when I was trying to do a grab or try to curve a punch when I didn't mean to. The physical button controls offer a more precise input, though both options are valid and completely up to you to try out. They gave you options for a reason. I do want to note though, if you choose to play with the physical buttons, you can play with the Joy-Con grip, the Pro Controller, or just a single Joy-Con if you want to play 2 players. ARMS has 6 different game modes for you to try out, but the fights are pretty much the main focus and the meat and potatoes of this game. In this game mode, you could duke it out with other players in regular fight mode, or a team fight if you want to play with more than 2 people. There's a total of 10 different characters to play as, along with 10 different maps to fight on. The basic gameplay can be described as a game of cat and mouse, waiting for your opponent to mess up a punch that leaves them vulnerable for you to get in your punch. It's a mind game of sorts, but it's a pretty fun one. While the basic gameplay is pretty simple, the real metagame, as I stated earlier, is in the ARMS matchup and the cross collaborations. V-Ball is the next game mode, and it's basically a game of volleyball, although I gotta be honest, it turns more into a game of spam the arm punches as you try to keep the volleyball bomb from falling on your side of the map. This game mode in particular is my least favorite of the bunch, as it feels like it doesn't really add or take too much strategy to play, and the matches tend to be really short. Hoops is a game of basketball that feels like a game of fencing. You're trying to grab your opponent in order to throw them into a hoop like a game of basketball. It's another mind game of reading your opponent's moves, looking for the right opportunity for a grab while avoiding being grabbed too. You can also rush punch your enemies towards the sidelines to get them to bounce off the trampoline on the borders and into the hoop. Hoops is my favorite game mode outside of the main game mode. It's really fun and entertaining to play. Skillshot is a break the targets game where you're trying to combo breaking targets in a row while also trying to fight off an enemy at the same time. Chain your target breaks while avoiding your enemy's attacks and distractions. Games are won by having the best score, and I feel like even if you dominate at regular fights, Skillshot is a game where everyone has an equal shot at winning. Lastly, there is the 1-on-100 mode, which is basically a game of survival against 100 enemies. Every 10 enemies or so, the difficulty gets ranked up with bombs falling from the sky and enemies getting smarter and more challenging. This is a good mode to use as practice, especially if you want to rank up in online. ARMS' main single player mode is the Grand Prix, with a mix and match of 10 fights against a roster of enemies, sometimes with normal fights and sometimes with the other game modes I mentioned earlier. You can think of this game mode as a game story mode, but it's really just as lacking as, let's say, the story mode in the first Splatoon. It really acts more like an arcade or tutorial mode of sorts, where you can change the difficulty of the mode to better suit your proficiency level. Outside of the single player content, you have Versus, which lets you play the 6 different game modes I mentioned earlier with up to 4 players, depending on the game mode. At the end of any matches you fight, you're awarded with credits that you can use to buy new arms for your characters. Arms are bought in a lottery sense where you use the credits to play a target minigame. In these minigames you can unlock new arms at complete random just by breaking some targets. The rest of the game is for multiplayer mode. Party mode creates lobbies where you can quickly jump into online matches against other random strangers. While playing the public test punch, finding a match was incredibly quick and very seamless. I didn't have to wait long between matches and I was able to quickly change my characters if I wanted to before a match. ARMS honestly features some of the best online I've seen in a Nintendo game in terms of quality and wait times, specifically on the Switch. I've never experienced any lag in terms of online matches. I just wish once again there was some sort of communication system, but just like before, it's completely missing because Nintendo's smartphone app isn't out yet. Outside of the party mode, there is a rank match system that puts you against other players in your same skill level. This is your best bet at getting better at ARMS, especially if you're trying to play competitively at your skill level. If you're not into playing competitively, you can play the friends option to join matches against your friends online. Similar to the Super Smash Bros. Wii U system, you can create a lobby here or you can join your friends' lobbies that they've made. The last option is local wireless multiplayer mode, which is pretty much just local multiplayer but with 2 switches instead of 1. Moving on to visuals and music, ARMS has one of the best sounding theme songs I've ever heard. It's absurdly catchy. I can't help but hum along to the music every time it plays in the game, and it plays very often. The rest of the music is pretty good and often acts as variations of the main theme with its own set of vocals. Visually, ARMS is one of the better looking games on the Nintendo Switch. It runs at 1080p 60 when in TV mode, and that gets dropped when you jump into matches with more than one player locally. When 2 players are playing on one Switch, that's dropped down to 900p 60 frames per second and 900p 30 frames per second when you're playing with 4 players on one Switch. In handheld mode, the game runs at 720p 60, and it's a really solid experience when commuting on the go and getting in those last minute Grand Prix matches, especially for me since I tend to play with the physical buttons. ARMS has a lot of similarities with Splatoon for me. It's without a doubt a multiplayer centric game with the suggested focus towards the online multiplayer. This is Nintendo's best work in terms of online play in recent memory too. Games are quick to jump into and the lobby system for party mode is incredible. All the online multiplayer game modes are available in the single player mode too, but they aren't as fun when playing alone obviously. I'd say they feel more like practice for the actual online play. While the gameplay can look and feel bland at first glance, the research and strategy of picking the best arms and finding your sweet spot combination is pretty fun. The one drawback outside of the bare minimum single player content is really what I feel is a lack of content. Though the online multiplayer is really fun, I feel like there's something missing here, sort of to the extent of how I felt when Splatoon first launched. ARMS is really fun, I'm just not sure how much the current game modes will sustain my attention for much longer over the next few weeks and months. Nintendo has come out and say that they're going to be supporting the game with free new fighters, maps, and updates in the future, so this could pretty much turn out like another Splatoon strategy, in which case that originally came out really great. If you enjoyed what you played in the test punch, I think ARMS is worth picking up at full price. It's a very entertaining and adrenaline rushing multiplayer game. Just know that the content can be a little low for now, but it seems like Nintendo is following the approach that they did with Splatoon, and in which case if they are, it won't be a problem for too long. Thank you all very much for watching my review. If you enjoy the content I make, consider clicking that subscribe button and that bell icon to join the notification squad. As always, if you have any questions about the game or any clarification about things I said in the review, leave a comment down below or hit me up on Instagram or Twitter. Thank you all very much for watching, hope you guys have a great day, and I'll see you all in the next one.